Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, the madness continues. After a jam-packed Thursday of March Madness action, we are rolling on and we're going to be breaking down the Friday slate of the round of 64, Friday, March 21st, 2025. We are going to break down all six games, tell you what you can expect from each game, and tell you who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups and what you should consider if you are doing player props or making bets on these games. Now, the Thursday slate, I got to admit, my bracket is not great. I've kind of missed all of the 50-50 toss-ups. I had Clemson over McNeese. I had Yale over A&M. I had High Point over Purdue. Hey, you win some, you lose some. The good news is I really haven't lost a whole lot of teams that I had going very far. Still a lot of possible points left. But, I'm going to need some help in these next few days if I want the bracket to come back. From a DFS perspective, we'll see how it goes with the rest of the night. I've got some live lineups. There was a lot that I got right about the Thursday slate. I was all over Braden Huff. I was all over Tahad Pettiford. Was all over Denver Jones as well. It was all over Braden Smith, who was one of the best performers early in the day. The only thing I misstepped was I really tried to galaxy brain Kamani Hamilton of High Point. I'd watched High Point play a few times. I really thought Hamilton was going to be able to get to the rack against Purdue, and he just couldn't stay out of foul trouble. And, sometimes you win some, you lose some on that one. That was kind of the only dud that I had today. And so, like I said, we'll see with how this night slate plays out is whether I'm going to end up making money on Thursday or not. But, we had a lot of stuff that we had right in our breakdown. As for the rest of the NCAA tournament, make sure you are subscribed to our channel that we can be with us for the rest of the tournament, because we're going to be having DFS breakdowns for every March Madness slate. And if our video yesterday or the one today helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps you out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress that enough, and I really do appreciate it. But all right, y'all, we got 16 games to break down, so let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so game number one of the Friday slate is going to be Baylor taking on Mississippi State, a true 8-9 toss-up game where I could see this game going either way, because I truly think that this matchup is strength against strength. KenPom has this one projected to be Baylor 74-73. That is a game total of 147 points. The reason why is because these teams, they don't necessarily get super up and down, but they're not great defenses. Baylor ranks 320th in tempo. They're outside the top 250 in defensive rebound rate and defensive three-point percentage. Mississippi State is 126th in tempo, so they will push the pace a little bit. They're only 46th in defensive efficiency. They're a poor three-point shooting team. They're an elite offensive rebounding team, and they're a poor three-point defensive team. So with both these teams being poor from behind the arc, you kind of think that there could be some scoring going on this one. That total 147 is not all that bad. Now, I do promise I'm going to try to be more succinct on this episode than I was for the Thursday slate, because that was the longest episode I've ever done. I was exhausted by the end of it. So I'm going to try to get this breakdown in quick. On the Baylor side, there's just a few names that I'm really considering. At the top, I am considering Norchad Omier. He's just one of the most consistent performers in all of college basketball DFS. Baylor, since the injury to Josh Ojonwuna, has had no size. Norchad's like the only size. He's virtually a guaranteed double-double. He's virtually a guaranteed 35 fantasy points. He's going to play the whole game. You know that he rarely gets in foul trouble because he just knows he cannot get in foul trouble, and so he just doesn't foul. He'd rather play soft defense and give up a bucket than foul and put himself in a position where he's on the bench. So you're going to get max minutes. You're going to get a ton of rebounds. I don't mind him at 9,700. I think he's one of the safest plays. If you are advancing to round 2 of the Survivor on Friday, I think he's one of the safest top of the board plays at 9,700. BJ Edgecombe is going to play in the NBA. He is Baylor's best all-around player, in my opinion. Since the Ojonwuna, he has upped his rebound rate. And basically, ever since you see down the course of the season, he has upped his usage. He's upped his shot attempts because they know that he's their best guy now, and they're going to ride him. At $8,800, I'll absolutely have him in my player pool. I got to be honest, I'm kind of not all that interested in anyone else after that. Like, they're kind of just rotating everyone else evenly. I'm a little bit intrigued by Jeremy Roach because they did show that they would play him a lot in the conference tournament. And we know his history with Duke. He has a history performing in the NCAA. Jaden Nunn also has me a little bit intrigued because of how in the Big 12 tournament. But really, there's just not a whole lot else here, right? All these other guys are rotating. They're not big, high usage players. There's just not a whole lot else to talk about. If you want to take shots at Roach or Nunn as value plays, I think the price is very affordable, but there is some risk understood with those plays. Now, on the Mississippi State side, I love Josh Hubbard in this one. Baylor is very weak at defending guards, and Josh Hubbard is going to shoot the rock. That's what he does. Now, he does not put up a lot of peripheral stats, but he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. He's going to take a ton of shots. I don't mind him at $8,400 against Baylor's defensive weakness. I love Keyshawn Murphy. I just wish they played him more. Now, the good news is in the SEC tournament, in a close game against Missouri, he did play 29 minutes, which is one of his highs on the season. He generally does not play that much. So maybe this team has realized that he is one of their best players and does need to be in the game more. And in that game, he put up 37 DraftKings points. With Baylor being a weak rebounding team, I think Keyshawn Murphy is a really high upside mid-range play. After that, I think you got some GPP guys in Melendez and Kugel. We've talked about them at length over the course of the season. You just never really know how much Chris Jans is going to play him. You never really know if the shot's going to be falling. Like Riley Kugel last game, 30 minutes, 0 for 7 from the field, but still 21 DraftKings points. Maybe that's a sign that Chris Jans is going to ride with him no matter how the offense is going. But it just really, there's a lot of upside, but there's a lot of risk as well. I really think that the Murphy is the safest and best all-around play on this Mississippi State side. Next game up, we've got Robert Morris taking on Alabama. This is an interesting one for many reasons. I mean, this is probably going to be one of the ones we spend the longest amount of time on. KenPom has this one as Alabama 92-72. That is a game total of 164 points. Big reason why Alabama ranks first in the nation in tempo. However, when you think of some of the best teams in the country and how they match up relative to some of these smaller schools, Bama is not as scary of a matchup as a Houston or an Auburn or a Duke, right? Firstly, because of that tempo. Secondly, because they rank only 32nd in defensive efficiency, and they don't force a lot of turnovers. You're going to get your shots off against Alabama, right? So I really, I talked about on the Thursday show, one of my slogans for the tournament, 16 seeds score points too, right? Well, Robert Morris is going to score points against this Alabama side. And it's pretty clear for Robert Morris who's going to be scoring the points. Cam Woods is one of their best overall players. He is the usage leader on the season. 15% combined rebound rate. He can fill up the stat sheet, y'all. He's going to be out on the floor the entire game. I think he's a really solid play at $8,200. And even if this game does get out of hand, I think he's still going to be out there on the court, still out there putting up stats. I do like him. Alvaro Folgueras is a guy to look at. I think he's going to be a transfer up from Robert Morris. He's really good, and he can fill up a stat sheet as well. He's $7,800. He definitely has a lot of upside also. Their other three starters after that are Dickerson, Omajafo, and Smith. Smith had a really good Horizon League tournament. He was really good in those games, played a ton of minutes, put up a lot of stats. I kind of like him as kind of this mid-range value play at 5,500. But like I said, this is a team that is going to be able to put up points against this Alabama squad. And I do think that you can consider these guys probably more so GPP plays than cash game plays, but I do think that they can be considered. Now, on the Alabama side, the trickier thing to do is to play guys on the actual 1 or 2 seed in this instance, right? Because if you look at Auburn today, Janai Broome did not get you the value you needed. Chad Baker-Banzar did not get you the value you needed. But at the same time, Tahad Pettiford, Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, they were all great, right? Because when you had these blowout games, you're scoring, the team's scoring a lot of points, but it's kind of like more even shares of the pie, right? And so these value guys are going to be the guys that are going to be able to get there because they're going to have, just a little bit of a bigger slice of pie than they normally do, right? So for Alabama, tying that in, Mark Sears is probably not the guy I would be considering playing. The only counter argument would be that in last season's March Madness, if you go back and look at it, his usage rate skyrocketed. He hasn't been great as of late, but if you think that this is a game that where they're really going to ride Mark Sears, they really want to get him back on track, I could see it at $8,600. But just judging based off the track record, and even looking at Houston today, none of the Houston guys were great value pieces in DFS. I just don't think you want to pay up near the top in a 1 or 2 seed that's going to blow another team out, and guys not going to get max minutes. Now, here's the big variable with Alabama. Grant Nelson is listed as questionable. They came out and said he will not play his usual amount of minutes in this game. Do not play Grant Nelson in DFS. What that does, somebody's going to have to get those minutes. Somebody's going to have to get those shots and rebounds that he normally puts up, right? I think that could mean more shots for the normal starting center, Cliff Amorie. I really do like Big Cliff. I don't know why they don't play him more. If he were to play 25 minutes in this game, he could absolutely break a slate. I don't know if they necessarily will, though. I think the two guys that are going to get the most direct boost are Mo Diabate, who is a really good fantasy points per minute player, really impactful in the time that he's out there, and Jaron Stevenson, who's a guy that we saw get a huge minute boost after Grant Nelson left the Florida game, played 29 minutes in that game, put up about 19 DraftKings points. So I really do like both Stevenson and Diabate. I would probably not play them in the same lineup, but I think they are very, very reasonable plays here on this slate to try to take advantage of that Grant Nelson injury. For the guard spot for Alabama, who could be their Denver Jones or Todd Pettiford, I would kind of comp LeBaron Philon to their Todd Pettiford. He kind of ended the SEC tournament on a sour note against Kentucky. This could be a game they could use the freshman to get some NCAA tournament reps, get him used to the lights, get him used to the environment, and let him kind of get extended run. That's what Auburn did with Todd Pettiford today. Now, he's a little more expensive than Pettiford was at $6,600, but I really do think LeBaron Philon could be an upside GPP play if you want to get to him. And then, y'all, I banged the drum for Aiden Holloway the last 2 seasons of college basketball. He's a guy who can come off the bench, play limited minutes, and fill up a stat sheet in the time that he's in. He's only $3,900. I'm playing GPPs, and I'm going to be playing a ton of lineups. He's going to be in some of them because he does have the upside to come in and break a slate. Next up, we have Lipscomb taking on Iowa State. KenPom has this one projected to be 78-66 in favor of the Cyclones. That is game total of 144 points. Iowa State, slightly more imposing matchup for the 14 seed than Alabama is. They're 4th in tempo, which is still pretty fast, but they're 9th in defensive efficiency. Lipscomb, their opponent, is actually pretty good, y'all. They're 83rd in KenPom, 75th on offense, 100th on defense, but they do like to slow it down. They're 257th on tempo, and they have a very clear goal in mind, right? Like, they are going to run their starters into the ground, and they're going to be very methodical, and they're not going to let you get out and run in transition. They are a very poor offensive rebounding team because they don't crash the glass. They will literally just get back in transition and make sure that you can't get out on the break so that their starters don't have to run as much, so that way they can play them more minutes, because they rank 333rd in bench minutes. They're also a very small team. Right, they're a good rebounding team on paper because they've been up against the Atlantic Sun, but they're also a very small team. Their starters are Joe Anderson, Will Pruitt, Gyasi Powell, Jacob Ognisevich, and Charlie Williams. Ognisevich is their best player, averages about 20 and 8. He's their highest usage player. He can fill up a stat sheet. I think it's $7,800. It's a pretty reasonable price tag if he were playing his normal ASUN competition, but I just don't know how he's going to fare going up against these Iowa State bigs who are very good on both sides of the ball. Will Pruitt is kind of just a designated scorer. He does average about 6 boards a game, but really most of his fantasy points come from scoring. I don't like the price tag at $7,600. If he were about $6K even, I would like him a lot. The guy that makes more sense to me to play would be Joe Anderson. He is their true point guard. He has a 23% assist rate on the season, averages more than 3 rebounds, about 4 assists a game. And he really filled it up in the ASUN tournament over those 3 games, putting up 50, 46, and 46 DraftKings points. If you think that Lipscomb keeps this game close, he's probably going to be a big reason why. And I think you could pair him and Ognisevich. If you think Lipscomb's going to pull off an upset, pair those two together because they're going to play a ton of minutes and they're going to, be taking a ton of shots. Now, on the Iowa State side, we got big injury news to talk about on this team as well because Keshawn Gilbert is out for the NCAA tournament. Now, what that does is that is going to likely change up their starting lineup. It's likely to be Lipsy at the 1, Heiss at the 2, Curtis Jones at the 3, Jordan Jefferson Josh Jefferson. I said Justin Jefferson, the Vikings wide receiver. I said Jordan Jefferson, the LSU quarterback, but it is Josh Jefferson, former St. Mary's player at the 4, then Deshaun Jackson at the 5, right? So here's where that Keshawn Gilbert injury is going to be impactful. Curtis Jones, when the other players on this team were injured this season, was a supremely high usage player. When he wasn't coming off the bench and when he was playing 30 minutes a game, he was routinely getting you 40 plus DraftKings points. I think he is probably price tag considered the best play on the slate. Like honestly, I think he has the potential to go for about 40, 45 DraftKings points at a salary of $7,200. And I think it's going to be in a ton of my lineups in the Survivor contest and in GPPs. Also, when Keshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones were hurt, we saw Josh Jefferson absolutely explode for 2 games. It was the Houston and the Oklahoma State game. He put up 37 against Houston and 39 against Oklahoma State. He could do that again here against this team with Keshawn Gilbert out. He's going to see more shots. He's going to see more usage. And he is a guy that can distribute the ball at the 4 spot. So I really do like Josh Jefferson here on this slate at $8,300 as well. I also really like Deshaun Jackson. I think he's a sneaky GPP play. So I'm always going to have an affinity in my heart for Deshaun because he is a Charlotte 49er transfer. He was for us the year he was here. Charlotte really fumbled the bag last year in not getting to the NCAA tournament when they had Jackson and Milicic, but that's a story for another time. But Jackson's put up 25 DraftKings points in 3 straight games. He has played his season high in minutes in back-to-back games, 24 and 26 in the Big 12 tournament. So, if that's a sign that, in the postseason play, they're going to play him more minutes. He's a guy that is a great fantasy point per minute player. He's a great rebounder, great shot blocker. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, he could absolutely smash his price tag of $5,000. He is a guy that is going to be a GPP play, in my opinion. And then Nate Heiss is a guy that we've played as a value play when other guys have been hurt. When Gilbert and Lipsey were hurt against BYU, he put up 23 DraftKings points. Problem is, DraftKings has priced him up a little bit to $4,800. DraftKings knew what was up. So I do think he is playable, but I would have much preferred to see him as a cheaper play than $4,800. Next up, last game of the early window, we've got Colorado State taking on Memphis. Colorado State as the 12 seed favored over the 5. KenPom has this one as Colorado State 74-73. That is a game total of 147 points. Memphis will get up and down. They're ranked 28th in tempo. They're only 40th in defensive efficiency, and they are not a good defensive rebounding team. But that is something Colorado State is unlikely to take advantage of. Colorado State ranks 251st in tempo, 49th in defensive efficiency, and they're a very poor offensive rebounding team. What they want to do is they want to limit transition and they want to hold opponents to one shot. They're a really good defensive rebounding team. And they really force long possessions by the opponent. They do not let the opponent score in transition a whole lot. They don't really have a whole lot of great individual scoring, so they have a super high assist rate as a team. So let's go ahead and talk about that team. So Nick Clifford is their guy. He has been just one of the most steady, consistent performers in terms of DraftKings points pretty much since conference play started in the Mountain West. And this is not really a step up in competition from what they've seen in the Mountain West, but Memphis being from the American Athletic. So I really think $9,000 a reasonable price tag to pay. He has shown a 5x, 6x upside at that price tag. I think he's a great play if you're playing the Survivor. I really do like Nick Clifford here at $9,000. And everybody else on this team is cheap. Kyan Evans was chalk in the Mountain West Championship game against Boise. His shot just wasn't falling, though. He was 1 for 4 from the field. Only put up 11 DraftKings points, but he still plays max minutes, has a huge role on this team. I'm willing to go back to him for that reason. Jalen Lake is another starting guard that plays a ton of minutes. Didn't really do a whole lot in that Mountain West Championship game, but he's only $4,000. That's a very reasonable price for a guy who's going to play 30-plus minutes. And then their two bigs are Crocker Johnson and Bemba. But I'm going to be honest, I think they have their hands full in this one. I think Memphis's bigs can dominate this game. So let's talk about them. So Memphis, they have another big piece of injury news, right? And that is that Tyrese Hunter, their second best player, is out. This is an NCAA tournament experienced player with Iowa State and Texas. He did miss the American Athletic Championship game. So we have a 1-game sample size of seeing what this team's going to do in a postseason situation without Tyrese Hunter. And what happened was PJ Haggerty went off. 23 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, 37 DraftKings points. He could absolutely do that again. But what you also saw was more usage and more shots for some of the other guys, because that's kind of what Haggerty usually does. Dane Danger was a huge part of the offense, 11 for 18 from the field, 53 DraftKings points against UAB. And like I said, I think he has the potential to eat against this Colorado State front court. I think it's a great matchup for him. I really do. As long as he stays out of foul trouble, if he plays max minutes, which he did in the American Athletic Tournament, he played 36 minutes in every game. If he plays max minutes, he's going to absolutely smash. Love Dane Danger. I think he is one of the, not like the top tier plays on the slate, but in that second tier, the 8K range, I think he's one of the best plays, period. After those two, Musa Cease is a high upside big man that you never really know how many minutes he's going to play, but he can put up a lot of stats while he's out there. And in the American Athletic Tournament, he had 37 and 34 in their last games, DraftKings points, that is. So he's a high upside guy that if you're not going to get the danger, it might be kind of a leverage play to play Cease. Nick Jourdain's their last big. He kind of gets whatever minutes are left over from the other two, which has been less and less because of how effective Danger and Cease have been on the floor together. So I'm kind of less interested in him. Now, Hunter's injury has to give minutes to somebody, right? And who it gave minutes to in the American Athletic Championship game was Baraka Okoji. He played 28 minutes, put up 14 DraftKings points. Hey, we'll take that at a salary of $3,400. He only took 1 shot in that amount of time. That's kind of the red flag there. But he got 4 assists. He got 2 steals. He was out there a ton. I don't mind him as a punt play at $3,400. There were some punt plays that worked today. If you punted and played Mawat Mag of BYU, that worked, right? So I really do think he could be kind of that on this slate. PJ Carter starter is a bench guard that he kind of played his normal role without Tyrese Hunter. That was kind of a little bit disappointing. But I do think there's a chance he could see more minutes. Colby Rogers was kind of a primary beneficiary, though. He had a huge role in the offense, 15 points on 12 shot attempts, 24 DraftKings points in that game. I'm willing to go back to him as well. This Memphis team, even though they're projected to lose this game, they're still likely to score a lot of points. And with the Hunter injury, there's definitely still a lot of ways that they can score a lot of those points. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to get on with the afternoon game. Now, before we get to the next group of games, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you reach out to me on Twitter. I'm also, going to tweet out all updates for the show as well. So if you want to stay in tune with what we're up to, that would be a place you can go. Also, I am in the Fantasy Corner Discord. It was 100% free. It's a community of a bunch of really good, really smart people who play DFS for a lot of different sports, and the college basketball chat in there has been jumping lately. There's a lot of good info, a lot of good suggestions, a lot of good ideas, and people just talking lineups, talking strategy all day long, and then sweating it out together, and it's a blast to be a part of. I cannot recommend it enough if you're looking for people to talk about DFS with, and it is 100% free. Lastly, I do post articles to the Patreon for every single college basketball DFS slate with my core plays. So if you want to know who actually makes my DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon. I can't just sit here and promise that you can plug and play those guys and win thousands of dollars. It's not that easy, but you can get well-researched, well-thought-out takes from somebody who knows what they're doing with this and help you improve your college basketball DFS game. And that is for every slate. All right, now let's go ahead and continue with the next set of games, starting with another 116 matchup. Well, not another. I guess this is the first one of the day. Mount St. Mary's taking on Duke. KenPom has this one as Duke 85-56. That is a total of 141 points. Duke is a scary matchup for a 16 seed. They rank 267th in tempo. It's pretty slow. And they are 4th in defensive efficiency. It's pretty good. And they have no true defensive weaknesses, right? So this is not the matchup you're going to want to target Mount St. Mary's in. Now, Mount St. Mary's, their starters are Dallas Hobbs, Xavier Lipscomb, Javon Irvin, Dola Adebayo, and Joey Cordelia. And then Orlandis Keys will play a ton of minutes off the bench. He is kind of like turning into one of their best players as the season goes on. He's been really, really good. Maybe he could be a guy that comes in and when both teams have their benches in as the game is ending, he could be a guy that could put up a lot of DraftKings points, right? Now, I was in the building for them to beat American in the first 4, and they really used their size of Cordelia and Adebayo their advantage. They're really athletic guys. They were really good against American, and Mount St. Mary's looked like a quality basketball team, but they weren't playing Duke, so I just don't really have a whole lot of interest in these guys. I mean, like maybe I could see some of these guys exceeding against Duke's bench, but Duke's bench is still quality players as well. So I just have a trouble seeing it. The one guy I would probably try would be Keys as a GPP play. Next up on the Duke side, Cooper Flagg is going to be playing in this game. I'm not playing him in DraftKings. Sorry. We've seen enough of a sample size this season of Duke beating the brakes off of a team in the ACC and Cooper Flagg not getting there from a DraftKings perspective. Again, he only played 27 minutes, only put up 30 DraftKings points. Illinois only played 23 minutes, only put up 33 DraftKings points, right? Like just in blowouts, he doesn't get there. And there's no need for him to try, right? I feel the same way about Conkinipple, feel the same way about Sion James, Tyrese Proctor. The starters are not going to play max minutes in a blowout situation. Now, the one starter I would consider is Kaman Malawach because he doesn't play max minutes anyway. And he's been really good as of late. He's only $6,000 on DraftKings. He's a guy that I could see myself playing from their starting lineup. But I'll be honest, the two guys that I'm the most interested in a blowout situation are Isaiah Evans and Patrick Ngamba, because Evans is an absolute flamethrower from 3. We've seen him come in these blowouts and put up 20 plus DraftKings points. I really do think he can do that here. And if Duke puts this game away early, he's going to play a ton of minutes because they do want to develop him for next season. And then Patrick Ngamba, he's a guy that's filled in a lot as Malik Brown has been injured, and he's also played a lot in blowouts historically. So I think he checks 2 boxes there. He's going to play 15 plus minutes. He's only $3,700, and he can rack up fantasy points while he's out there. I think both Evans and Ngamba are solid value plays from that perspective. Caleb Foster is another guy who's filled it up in blowouts, but he's a lot more risky than Ngamba and Evans, who we see as a part of the regular rotation anyway. Next up, we've got Vanderbilt taking on St. Mary's. This is not a game environment you're going to want to be targeting. Pretty much every game this season that St. Mary's has been on the slate, I've kind of been fading the game almost entirely, except for like micro angles. And this is one that does have a few micro angles. So KenPom has this one projected to be St. Mary's 71-67. That's a total of 138 points. St. Mary's 359th in tempo. It's quite slow. And, oh, by the way, they're very good defensively, 7th in defensive efficiency, and they're an elite rebounding team. They're top 11 on both sides. Vanderbilt is 64th in tempo, 84th in defensive efficiency, and they are the smallest by effective height Power 5 team in college basketball. So, how does that shape up for Vanderbilt here in this game? Here's the good news about Vanderbilt. They were playing a super deep, super balanced rotation over the course of the SEC season. In the SEC tournament, in their game against Texas, they really hunkered down and played their best guys max minutes. And who are those best guys? Well, one of them was AJ Hogarth, who's an experienced point guard coming over from Michigan State. He's only $4,800 on DraftKings. Another was Chris Magnon, who is a defensive stopper who can rack up peripheral stats in a hurry if he's out there on the floor enough. Jason Edwards is another guy who played a lot of minutes. He is a pure scorer, does not put up a whole lot of peripheral stats. I don't like that profile, but he is only $5,100. And then Tyler Nickel, pretty much the designated shooter who's also a solid rebounder and occasionally will get you some assists. But the biggest development was Devin McLaughlin playing 35 minutes because he never does that, right? Ever. And Jalen Carey was pretty much a non-factor. If that continues to be the case here in this one, I'm avoiding Jalen Carey, and I think McLaughlin is in play. But here's the problem. St. Mary's bigs are really big, and they're really good. I'm really going to be targeting Mitchell Saxon here on this one because Mitchell Saxon is the big for St. Mary's that is going to play the most minutes. And if you're going to play minutes against this Vanderbilt team and you're a big, you're going to fall into some rebounds because you're just going to be able to reach up and go get it over their smaller bigs. That's what you're going to be able to do. And also, in case you were not aware, you have to be on the floor if you want to score fantasy points, which leads to the conversation about their other two bigs, Paulius Marascus and Harry Wessels. They are splitting minutes right now, which makes them a super difficult projection, super difficult to determine who to play. But if the minutes are going to be kind of pretty much 50-50 over the course of the last 5 games, I would prefer to play the cheaper one in Wessels. However, Marascus has been the better one over the course of the season. So it is kind of yet to be determined, will they lean on Marascus more in the tournament or will they lean more on Wessels in the tournament? I'm going to kind of use this game to wait and see and use that as information for their round 2 opponent, if that makes sense. Now, from the guard spot, Augustus Marshallonis is the straw that stirs the drink for them. Love him as a player. I think there's a great chance he puts up 35-plus DraftKings points in this one. I think he's a solid play at $1,000. I'm not interested in anybody else on St. Mary's. Next up, we have got UNC taking on Ole Miss. Now, if you're looking for a game stack, a competitive game on this DraftKings slate, this is the one to go after. There's another one a little bit later that's slightly less competitive, but slightly higher total. But if you want, like, hey, I know this is going to be a close game. I know who to target. This will be that game. All right. Ken Pom has this one as 78-77 in favor of Ole Miss. That is a total of 155 points. Big reason why both these teams will get up and down. UNC is 34th in tempo. Ole Miss is 131st in tempo. Now, Ole Miss, they're playing the whole Chris Beard, no middle. They're 22nd in defensive efficiency, whereas UNC is a little soft up at 53rd. But these two teams are getting a little easier to target in postseason play because these are teams that have played deep rotations over the course of the season, and now they're starting to play less and less guys. For North Carolina, RJ Davis is their guy. He was great in the first half of that game against San Diego State, but they were cruising, so he didn't have to play max minutes. I think in this one, he will have to play max minutes, and I love the idea of playing him at $7,600. After that, Lubin and Withers were like, they didn't play a whole lot against San Diego State because they didn't have to, but they've been really good for Carolina over like the last month of the season. Ole Miss is a team that you can target post-up bigs against, so I think Van Allen Lubin would be a guy that you could reasonably target here. Elliot Cadeau is a guy who has kind of resurrected his season recently. In the last 2 games, he's played 27 minutes and put up at least 33 DraftKings points in both of them. I think there's a chance that he could have another solid outing here. In this one, he's not scoring dependent. He can put up a ton of peripheral stats in a hurry, and I think they've shown that they're going to be playing him more and more minutes going forward. Now, that comes at the expense of Drake Powell and Ian Jackson because Seth Trimble is playing more and more minutes as well. So Powell and Jackson will be kind of the 2 guys that I think are getting left out, and they would be the 2 that I would not be targeting here in this situation. On the Ole Miss side, this is another team that has been playing a deep bench over the course of the season, but in the SEC tournament, they really tightened it up. Sean Padula was dealing with a little bit of foul trouble in both games in the SEC tournament, but he still played a decent amount of minutes. And he didn't have any good DraftKings performances, but I really think that you can go back to him still. This is a cheap price tag for him. Carolina is a team that gets up and down. They give up peripheral stats in a hurry because of how many possessions you're going to see against them. I really do like Sean Padula at 7,300. I love Malik D at 6,400. North Carolina has been vulnerable to the bigs all season long. We've been kind of opining all season long that Dia is a great fantasy points per minute player, just doesn't ever play a whole lot of minutes. Well, in the SEC tournament, he played 30 minutes or more in both those games. put up 26 DraftKings points or more in both those games. Yes, he's a little pricier here at 6,400, but this is a plus matchup with a guy who's playing additional minutes than he normally does. And if you're a projections person and you project him for 30 minutes, he's going to pop on the projections. So love the idea of playing him at $6,400 here on this slate. The other guys that they're playing more and more, Dre Davis, Jalen Murray, Matthew Morrell. Murray kind of carried the load at point more with Padula dealing with foul trouble. So I don't know. I think I'm a little more cautious about Murray than the other two, because if Padula is not in foul trouble, he's not going to have the same role offensively. Whereas Morrell and Dre Davis are kind of like pure scorers. They're not great peripheral stat guys. Well, Morrell really not. Dre Davis can get you some boards. But I do think that with them playing boosted minutes, all 5 of those guys are going to be targetable. All right, next up, we've got what I think is a really intriguing game. Grand Canyon taking on Maryland. KenPom has this one projected to be Maryland 82-68. That is a total of 150 points. Maryland is a team that they rank 57th in tempo and 6th in defensive efficiency. So you're going to get a lot of possessions against them, but it's generally not advisable to target a whole lot of guys against Maryland, because they're a really good defensive team, especially against bigs, because Derek Queen and Julian Reese will draw fouls against bigs and get their opposing starting bigs to the bench, right? So Grand Canyon is a team that's 93rd on KenPom. They're 14th in the nation in tempo, 67th in defensive efficiency. So they're a good defensive team, y'all. And they will get up and down. So this is actually not a bad time to target some Maryland guys. Now, Grand Canyon has no true defensive weaknesses, right? They're a poor three-point shooting team, and they turn the ball over a lot offensively. But the problem is with them is that they played a lot of their conference play without Tyon Grant Foster, who is their best guard. So their team's still kind of getting used to playing with him again. And so what that does is that has created, now that they've gotten into WAC tournament play and they've kind of figured out who their guys are, it's created a shorter rotation. They're very starting 5 heavy until foul trouble occurs. And that starting 5 is Grant Foster, Ray Harrison, Colin Moore, Jacoby Coles, and Duke Brennan. Duke Brennan on paper shapes up to be a very good play, given how many minutes he's been playing lately, given how many fantasy points he's been putting up lately. But like I said, the Maryland bigs is not a situation that I want to target. It's just something I want no part of. I will let other players on DraftKings chase the game log. He's going to be a guy that I'm not going to be playing as much as the field. Jacoby Coles, same deal. He's been great lately. He's a transfer from TCU. He's legitimately really good at basketball, right? Like, this is a team, like you may remember, that, beat St. Mary's in the first round last year and gave Alabama one heck of a fight in the second round. So this is a quality basketball team. They returned a lot of those guys. Jacoby Coles is one of them. He's good, but I don't like the matchup of the Maryland bigs, and we're not getting any kind of discount on the price. So sorry, Jacoby. I'll maybe catch up with you around 32. Tyon Grant Foster, I do like, though. I think the upside is still kind of untapped with him because of the fact that we were dealing with his injury. He was great in the NCAA tournament last season. The way to beat this Maryland team is with guards like him. So I do think this is a good spot for him. I think he's a solid GPP play at $7,800 because I do think there is some risk associated with him. On the Maryland side, the Crab 5, as they call it, is going to play all of the minutes. Like, do not target a Maryland bench player, y'all, because they're going to play Gillespie, Rice, Miguel, and Queen and Reese the entire game. Now, Rice and Miguel are fairly similar players that whichever one happens to be hot for whatever offensive day is the one that puts up the DraftKings points. Against Illinois, it was Rodney Rice. He had 32. Against Michigan a day later, it was Selt Miguel. He put up 28. Which one's it going to be? I don't know. I tend to play Miguel more because he's cheaper, but one of those two guys tends to give you a 4x, 5x performance night in and night out, and this is another night that they could do it, with Grand Canyon being a very good pace-up matchup. Jacoby Gillespie is a point guard. If you're looking to stack multiple players on the Maryland side, he's the guy I would target. He's kind of taken on slightly less of a scoring role as we've gotten closer and closer into March, but the assist rate is sky high. He's going to play all of the minutes. I don't mind him at $8,300, but let's be honest, the best part of this Maryland team is their bigs, Derek Queen and Julian Reese. Derek Queen, a guy that I've been campaigning, his nickname should be the Blizzard. Some of y'all will get that. He's a guy that can put up DraftKings points in a hurry. He plays kind of like this point forward role at times for them, even though his assist rate isn't all that good. He's a big who can operate on the perimeter and go to the rim. He's a very fun player to watch. I like him a lot. I just wish he were a little cheaper. Like, I really do like him as a DraftKings option if he were $8,500, not $9,500. But let's be honest, he does have the skills to get there. I think there's better plays on it than him, but I totally understand playing him. Julian Reese is down here at $8,000. He's got a ton of upside, but he's got to stay out of foul trouble. He is so prone to getting into foul trouble that, to me, he's exclusively a GPP only play, because you never know when he's only going to play like 17 minutes because he gets in foul trouble. Next up, We have got Norfolk State taking on Florida. I'm sorry, Norfolk State. Like, this is not going to be a fun experience for you. Ken Pom has this one, Florida 90-64. That is a total of 154 points. Florida is not the scariest one seed matchup. They're 59th in tempo, 10th in defensive efficiency. Yeah, sorry, Norfolk State. You're going to get the break speed off of you. Norfolk State, they're 180th on Ken Pom. They're 227th in tempo, so they're not going to play super fast. They turn the ball over a lot. They're also a very poor three-point shooting team, but they don't take a lot. They're pretty smart with their shot selection. And they're not a good defensive rebounding team. They can give up a lot of offensive boards. They're also fairly bench heavy, but they got really more condensed in their MEAC tournament. So maybe you could get a little bit of a price discount on some of these guys. Their starters lately have been Christian Ings, Brian Moore, Jaylani Darden, Jalen Myers, and Coel Madding. So fun fact, Madding I actually coached against when he was in high school. He was just this big, lanky guy that was just kind of like a rim runner. Wasn't really all that skilled, but he's developed a lot into a college player, very happy for him because he was a nice kid that he is playing in the NCAA tournament. $5,000 is too expensive for him on DraftKings, though. So I'll be rooting from afar, but I won't have you in my lineups, buddy. Jaylani Myers. I'm sorry, Jalen Myers. Jaylani is Darden. Jalen Myers puts DraftKings points on not a whole lot of minutes, but it's Florida. Well, what you would be dependent on here is him being in when the backups are in and putting up points against Florida's backups. Problem is Florida's backups are still probably better than he is. No disrespect. After that, Christian Ings is kind of their best player. He plays a ton of minutes. He has a pretty high usage rate. But this is a game that's going to turn into a blowout. I just don't know how to feel about it. And then Chris Fields is a guy that comes off the bench for them. He leads the team in usage rate. He's a really good points per minute player, but he just doesn't play a whole lot of minutes, so it's kind of hard to feel confident about him. Brian Moore is also a pretty good player, but he's really a volume shooter. I don't generally prefer that type of profile against a one seed. On the Florida side, it's the same argument that I was making for Bama. Like, yes, this is a smash matchup, but it's going to be hard for Walter Clayton to get there if he only plays 25 minutes. And you can look back at their game log, like look at the blowout wins that they've had. Like, they just haven't really needed a whole lot from him. Like, there's some 35s, like some 40s in here, but like nothing really slate breaking. Like, and there's some worse ones than that as well. I just don't see the need for this team to play him a ton of minutes when they're prepping for a long tournament run. If you're looking to get like a guard for Florida, Aberdeen would probably be the biggest beneficiary of a blowout. But even he's priced up at $4,000. You're not getting a huge discount there. And then also the other guy, Klavshar, would be a beneficiary of a blowout. The bigs for Florida are kind of tough to target because they don't play a whole lot of minutes, whether it's a close game or a blowout. They're kind of split in time right now. Condon's really good in the time that he's out there. Huff has been up and down. Chinyelu has been really good in the time that he's out there. I think from a DraftKings perspective, I think this could be a good hand-locked-in game. So they really, last year, he was their starting center. He was one of their best players, and they really want to get him back in game shape where he can give them a big-time role in this tournament. Why not try to get him minutes against this Norfolk State team? And $4,200, it won't take a whole lot for him to hit value. I kind of think he's a sneaky GPP play. All right. Next up, we got Troy taking on Kentucky. This is an interesting game from a DraftKings perspective. Ken Pom has it as Kentucky 82-70. That is a total of 152 points. Kentucky is not a super scary matchup for one of these 14 seeds. They're 23rd in tempo. They're 57th in defensive efficiency. They don't force a whole lot of turnovers. So you're going to be able to get your shots off against Kentucky, right? And on the Troy side, we know who the guys are going to be. They're going to be taking shots. Their starting lineup is Tatum Conaway, Marcus Rigsby, Miles Rigsby, Jackson Fields, and Thomas Dowd. So like the Rigsby bros are the second and third highest usage players on the team. The one that's priced up a little bit higher is Miles because he generally plays a little bit more minutes, generally a little bit more fantasy productive. But what's interesting with this Troy team, they're very analytically driven. They have really good spacing offensively. They're also a really good offensive rebounding team. And they're a really good rim and three team. Like, they don't take a whole lot of mid-range shots. They take shots that are analytically smart. And so they tend to kind of start on second base against a lot of the teams that they play for that reason. Now, here's the good news with them also. Their two best players, I think, are very targetable in this game. Tatum Conaway is a guy that absolutely fills out the stat sheet. I believe he was the player of the year in the Sun Belt. Huge usage rate. Will get 4+ boards, 4+ assists a game, also racks up the steals. Very consistent production. And like I said, Kentucky's a team that is not super scary from a production standpoint. I think $7,500 is a great price tag for him. And then Thomas Dowd is their big. He's really good, y'all. Really athletic for his size. I think he's going to be an up transfer here this offseason. In the Sun Belt tournament, he was dominant to put up 41 and 33 DraftKings points in their last 2 games. Kentucky is not the worst matchup in the world for bigs. So I think 6,200 for Dowd, given what he's done recently, is not a bad look at all. On the Kentucky side, they're dealing with injuries still, right? Lamont Butler says he's playing this game, but like, how many times have we seen it where he starts a game and then gets hurt and then is like never heard from again? I'm not playing him in DraftKings like the rest of this season, probably just because of the fact that that shoulder injury, it could pop at any time, it could hurt him at any time, and then you're going to be dealing with like less fantasy points because he's going to miss the rest of the game. Otega Owe has been really boom or bust since all the other guards for this Kentucky team have been injured. If you think it's going to be a boom, go for it. But there's a chance that it could be a bust. I think he's a high-risk GPP type of play, but just know that the usage has been there. He does have ability to put up peripheral stats. He does have the ability to break a slate. It's just, will he or won't he? Amari Williams is a really solid big. I think he's in pretty good spot on this one. He generally doesn't play the most minutes anyway. I think, Mark Pope has said as much. He doesn't want to play him more than 30 minutes a game, but he can put up a lot of fantasy points even without getting those max minutes. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Amari Williams. I kind of rather play Andrew Carr, though. Since Carr's gotten back from injury, he's been really, really good. Over 27 DraftKings points in his last 3, and the minute totals in those have all been varying. He's a stretch big. He's a really good rebounder. I do like Carr at $6,800, and I kind of think the way I'm going to attack this Kentucky team is primarily through Owe and Carr in GPP formats. Next up, we've got a really compelling game, a 7-10 between New Mexico and Marquette. Palm has this one as Marquette 77-73. That is a total of 150 points. That's pretty good for one of these competitive NCAA tournament games. Marquette ranks 155th in tempo and 23rd in defensive efficiency. So they're not quite like the Shaka Smart Havoc days of old, but they're still an elite turnover margin team. They don't turn it over a lot offensively, and they will force a lot defensively. Now, on the New Mexico side, they're 41st overall in KenPom, 19th in defensive efficiency, though. But here's the kicker, though. They're 4th in tempo. This could be a game that could really turn into a track meet. New Mexico really looks to score in transition as often as possible because their half-court shot making is really dependent on one player, and that's Donovan Dent. They have no true defensive weaknesses either. So it's not like there's a really spot like where we could just say, hey, play this guy on Marquette because this, right? They also rate very tall and effective height because Amzil and Borovikinen are starters, and they're both kind of power forwards. They kind of start 2 power forwards and a center. The rest of that starting 5, though, it is Donovan Dent at the point, True Washington at the 2, Amzil and Borovikinen at the forward spots, and then Nelly Jr. Joseph as the center. The minutes really increased for the starting 5 in their Mountain West tournament games, and I would really just be considering to just consider those starting 5. The bench was really not used very much in those games. Donovan Dent. Everything goes through him offensively. He's a guard that could absolutely take over March Madness. He's super consistent in his DraftKings scoring because he takes a ton of shots. He's got a supremely high assist rate, 36% assist rate on the season. That's a lot. So I really do like Dent. I think this is not a bad spot for him against Marquette. Nelly Jr. Joseph averages a double-double, 14-11. He's an absolute double-double machine, and we know for years now, play your bigs against Marquette. The only downside is he's quite expensive at $9,400. I think he could be kind of an under-the-radar top of the board play here on this slate. I am going to have him on my player pool for certain. But they're kind of the main 2 that I'm going to be considering. Washington, Amzil, and Borovikinen kind of game stack plays, in my opinion. Amzil kind of has this like slightly like boom or bust profile. Actually, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I had it mixed up. Amzil's kind of consistently in like a 21 DraftKings points range, whereas Borovikinen has this boom or bust profile, but he really hasn't done a whole lot lately. So yeah, just know that those 2 carry a little bit of risk. On the Marquette side, Cam Jones is their Donovan Dent. He is a supremely high usage player. He's taken at least 20 shots in the last 4 games. He also plays with a very high assist rate, but since he's been taking so many shots, that's been down in the last 4 games. If you want to just go like mano-a-mano, guard versus guard, you could go Cam Jones and Donovan Dent in the same lineup. I think it's possible. I think there's enough value on this slate that you could do that. And I think it's possible that it kind of turns into a contest between those 2 guards. So I definitely don't mind getting the Cam Jones here on this one. I think he's a very solid play. And then the other guy guys on Marquette, Joplin has been pretty good as of late. Like, really, they've condensed their offense in the last few games just to be Jones and Joplin primarily. And then Chase Ross is a guy that I really like his game in general, but it's just kind of not been the best in DraftKings. But at the same time, they're lowering his price tag. So you're getting Cam Jones at like one of the season lows Chase Ross at one of his season lows in price. And I think this is a pretty good spot to play him. I think he's a pretty solid value play. And then Ben Gold is the starting big who was really playing well before the Big East tournament started. And then in the Big East tournament, he put up 2 stinkers. So I don't really know what to make of that. All right, next up, we have got Akron taking on Arizona. And this is a fun game. KenPom has this one as 90-76 in favor of Arizona. Big reason why is because both of these teams are going to get up and down. Arizona 55th in tempo, only 33rd in defensive efficiency, so they're not a super scary matchup. Akron, on the other hand, they are 99th overall in KenPom. 66th on offense, 183rd on defense, but 16th in tempo. They are also one of the shortest teams in all of Division I. They rank 361st in effective height. But what's incredible is that they're still a positive rebounding team, that they generally start 4 players that are 6'3" or shorter. So this is a team that really Arizona could exploit that size mismatch if they wanted to. I struggle to see how Akron's going to play a 6'3" guy against the power forwards of Arizona. But anyway, let's break down what Akron usually does, right? So Akron's usual starters are Tavari Johnson, Seth Wilson, Nate Johnson, Isaiah Gray, and James Okonkwo. They're a pretty heavy bench team, though. They rank 29th in bench minutes. They will play Amani Lyles and Shema Scott off the bench, with Sharon Young kind of showing up and having splash games as well. In terms of their guys, they're all super cheap on DraftKings in the slate, and it's because of those split minute totals, right? But they're good basketball players. Nate Johnson, the MAC Player of the Year, he's $5,800, and his last 2 games have both been over 30 DraftKings points. He's good. He has really good rates. They're going to play him a ton of minutes in this game because it's probably going to be pretty close, and you can see a clear line of demarcation. The last 2 games in the MAC tournament, he played 33 minutes or more in both those games. He's going to play a lot. He's good. I like him a ton on this slate. I also like Tavari Johnson as well as the true point in those last 2 MAC tournament games, 29 and 31 minutes. So yes, this team plays their bench a ton, but in the last 2 conference tournament games, they really did kind of play their guys, so to speak. And then after those 2, I think Isaiah Gray is pretty interesting as well. Another guy who he played 30 minutes in that MAC championship game. I would rather just play Tavari Johnson at a cheaper price tag if you're looking to get exposure to the Akron side, though. And then off the bench, if you think that they're going to have to play a little bit big more, Amani Lyles is a super intriguing guy to go to off the bench. And he was great in those 2 MAC tournament games, 24 and 26 minutes. I think he's a great value play. I do think he carries a little bit of risk. Actually, I don't know. Looking at that game log, I don't think there's a whole lot of risk at all because he's been over 4x value in his last 8 games. I think he's a solid. Yes, he does come off the bench, but those minutes are trending in the right direction. They're going to need to play more size. I like Amani Lyles at $4,000. Now, on the Arizona side, their rotations have just been kind of frustrating recently because basically it's the Caleb Love show on offense. Caleb Love, from his days in North Carolina, has been ever – let me think of the best way to say this. Caleb Love has never seen a shot that he doesn't like. And he can shoot you into a Final Four or he can shoot you right to the NIT. That's what he does, right? And if it's good Caleb Love that you get, then he could break a DraftKings slate. If it's bad Caleb Love, then you're going to be just writing a check and depositing more money to DraftKings. He's $8,500 on a game environment like this. I think he's worth a look because if you get good Caleb Love, it could be a lot of DraftKings points. What's frustrating about this team, though, is their big rotation, right? So basically what happens is Visar and Awaka split minutes at the 5. Visar is good. He's really good. But Awaka puts up a lot more fantasy points per minute than Visar does. So Visar, while he generally plays more minutes, Awaka generally has the better points per minute ratio. So it begs the question of what's going to happen here in this one. I don't really know. I think Visar is the better player, but I just don't know how it's going to play out. Same thing at the power forward spot. They moved Trey Townsend back into the starting lineup after he was injured, and he was pretty good for a while. And then against Houston, he was dreadful. But I think that, honestly, Carter Bryant's a better player, and I just don't know. I don't have faith in them to play Carter Bryant more minutes than Trey Townsend. I don't. But at the same time, Trey Townsend, former Horizon League Player of the Year, this is the competition, the level of competition that he's used to going up against. So I think that there's a chance that any of these Arizona bigs go off. I probably wouldn't play more than 1 in the same lineup, but I think that all 4 are probably going to be in my player pool because I'm playing a lot of lineups tomorrow. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick breather, and then we're going to break down the Fortnite game. All right, just a reminder, if you have made it this far in the video, you're probably going to want to be with us for the rest of the NCAA tournament. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so that way you can be with us for all content as well as our weekly golf content. And once college basketball season ends, we're going to be rolling right into best ball draft season. So you're going to want to be here with us for all that. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please rate and review the audio. I cannot stress that enough, how much it helps me when you guys do that. And this is a big time of year for the podcast with it being March Madness. So it really does help to get more eyes here on the show. All right. Let's go ahead and move to the next game. We got UConn taking on Oklahoma. KenPom has it as UConn 76-75. That is a game total of 151 points. Reason why both these offenses are really, really good. The game's not going to be played at some kind of breakneck speed. UConn 343rd in tempo, but they're getting paced up by Oklahoma. And both of these defenses aren't very good at all. They both rank outside the top 70 in the nation. So there's going to be some scoring here in this game. It's just a question of who's going to be doing it. For Oklahoma, we can feel pretty confident that it's going to be coming from Jeremiah Fears. He has really taken over as the team's offensive leader. He's been over 45 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. And he can also put up some peripheral stats as well. Averages over 4 boards and assists on the season. I don't mind him at $8,500 as a play here on this late night game. Now, after that, there's only 2 interesting trends to talk about with this Oklahoma team. Sam Godwin has been injured. I have no idea if he's going to play or not. They've been started Muhammad Waggy in his place. Waggy has been pretty solid in his place as well. 17 and 30 in the last 2. In the Texas game, he ran into foul trouble, or else it could have been more. And then 18 in Missouri, that game where he also started in place of Godwin. So I really do think that Waggy's a really solid play as long as Godwin is out, but we got to have information that Godwin is out. What I would recommend doing if you're intrigued by this situation is you could probably build your lineups with Godwin and then late swap down to Waggy as soon as we get information on Godwin. Or we might have information on Godwin by the morning. I don't know, but you're going to want Waggy if Godwin is out. Also, Kobe Elvis has been really this team's second guard in the last few games. He's still at $4,000 on DraftKings. He's been over 18 DraftKings points in 3 of the last 4, really because he can generate his own shot. None of the other Oklahoma guards are really shot creators. They're kind of more just catch and shoot players. So they really do depend on Elvis to kind of take some of the load off of Jeremiah Fears. I don't mind getting a look at him at $4,000. He's a guy that it could get going really good or really bad. Trust me, from his time at Dayton, I watched a lot of him. Very volatile player. Now, on the UConn side, they're a tough team to evaluate, man, because they're so balanced offensively. You just truly never know which one of their pieces it's going to be. What I will say is that Oklahoma has been very susceptible to big men, especially since Sam Godwin has been out. Terrace Reed Jr. has shown the potential to nuke a DraftKings slate, like when he put up 63 DraftKings points against Providence. I'm not saying he's going to do that in this one, but I'm saying the potential is there. And if you're playing GPPs and you're playing enough lineups, he needs to be in your player pool. Never know when he's going to nuke. Johnson has actually been playing more minutes lately than Terrace Reed, but Terrace Reed's a much more fantasy point friendly type of play. So I don't mind taking shots at either of them. Johnson because he has been getting the minutes, but Reed because he has the track record of being able to nuke. After that, Caravan, McNeely, Ball, Diarra, like they could all go off. It just depends on what UConn's offensive game plan for the day is. I think McNeely probably has the most upside per dollar, we'll call it. But his shot really hasn't been falling as of late, but he's been taking a lot of them. So if he continues to take a lot of them, he's going to make some of them eventually. And I think it's $6,400. The price is right to get him back into your lineups. All right. Next up, we've got Xavier taking on Illinois. Now, this game, I have a now personal rooting interest for. KenPom has it as Illinois 82-78. That is a total of 160 points. That is massive. This is a game that you could absolutely game stack. Illinois ranks 18th in tempo. Xavier ranks 76th in tempo. These 2 teams are going to get up and down. They're going to score some points, right? I am now strongly rooting for Illinois in this game. I, as a Texas fan, drove up to Dayton to watch the first 4 game Xavier versus Texas. And I was really surprised. First off, it was like a Xavier home game. Like so many Xavier fans packed that place. I guess because Cincinnati's about an hour from Dayton, all of them were, able to procure tickets and drive on over and go to the game, right? But second off, just the Xavier fans were just not very sporting. Just like any time a Xavier fan was shown on the Jumbotron, they were doing horns down just to get a reaction out of the Texas crowd. And then as the fans around us during the game, like we're not too hostile or anything. Just general fan banter, not really going back and forth with me or anything, but complaining about the refs, like yelling that the Texas players are buns, stuff like that. But after the game, so many Xavier fans, like I was like, we were walking to the car and I was just kind of staring into space, contemplating the ending of Texas's season. And we get to the car, and my dad, who went to the game with me, he's like, "Hey, do you realize how many Xavier fans gave you horns down on that walk?" Really, really irritating. But the way to handle that is to not give them the time of day, because they're just looking to get a reaction out of you, right? But because of those Xavier fans, I'm now an Illinois Illini fan for the night. All right. But because let me tell you, like, I've been to Texas, Oklahoma. That's a rivalry. That's such a respectful rivalry. Like those two fan bases, they'll talk crap to each other, but like they're not getting in fights. Like after the game, like it's like, hey, that was fun. Like let's do this again next year, because we know we're doing it again next year. Xavier fans not like that. So Oklahoma fans, I'll give y'all credit. Like Oklahoma football fans, when I went to the Red River rivalry, very classy, very good-natured fan base. Xavier not so much. So anyway, on the Xavier side, in that game against Texas, what they got a foul trouble game from Ryan Conwell and Zach Freemantle, and it kind of prevented them from having, reasonable ceilings from a DraftKings perspective. But Marcus Foster bailed him out. He was on fire from three, hit 4 out of 5, put up 36 DraftKings points. I don't think he's going to do that again. Like, there's a chance he could do it again. I don't think it's likely. But he was the MVP of that Xavier team for that night. Conwell is this team's best scorer, best offensive player. I think it's more likely that he returns back to that role. But you're paying a lot for it up at $8,700 on DraftKings. I think there's better points per dollar plays out there than him. Illinois is a team that has been had by post scorers this season, so I could see Fremantle having a good game, but he's got to stay on the floor. He's got to stay out of trouble. And then honestly, Daylen Swain, I really had to see it in person to believe it. He is just not a good offensive basketball player. Texas was like willing to let him shoot from wherever on the floor. But he gets rebounds and assists. He can put up DraftKings points. If this game gets up and down, it stands to reason he could put up a lot of rebounds and assists because he plays a lot. But I generally don't like playing players who are not good offensive basketball players at $7,000 on DraftKings. Now, on the Illinois side, they have gotten everybody back. They're finally healthy. And they were playing well to start the Big Ten tournament until they ran into Maryland. That was undoing, was running into the Crab Five in that game. Now, what's interesting is this offense is being much more driven now by Kylan Boswell as opposed to Kasparis Giacochonis. So I'll be interested to see if that continues, but it does give Boswell a huge upside for a salary of $7,000. And Giacochonis, if he goes back to playing how he was playing at the middle of the year, he has a ton of upside at $7,600 as well. I just don't know which one it's going to be. Lately, it's been Boswell. Historically, it has been Giacochonis. Ivasic is also back fully healthy. He's a guy that has a ton of upside as well. Caden Shedrick put up a lot of DraftKings points against Xavier, so I do think that Ivasic could as well. I don't mind him at $7,100. He's another guy, though, like Fremantle, has got to stay out of foul trouble. Illinois' defensive stopper is Trey White. I think that's kind of primarily his role, though. I'm like, he's had some great games recently, but I'm not really interested to chase those, if I'm being honest. The wild card that I am going to play is going to be Morez Johnson Jr. He's a backup big that he played a ton against Maryland when Ivasic got in foul trouble, 29 DraftKings points in that game. He can put up a ton of DraftKings points in a hurry. And now that he's back healthy, to me, he is interesting and playable. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Bryant taking on Michigan State. This is a fun one, in my opinion. I like this game a lot. KenPom has it as being Michigan State 84-65. Michigan State ranks 145th in tempo, 5th in defensive efficiency. So they're a pretty good defense, but there's going to be some possessions in this game. And with how Bryant plays, there's really going to be some possessions in this game. Bryant ranks 7th in the nation in tempo, and they are 6th nationally in effective height, and they are 338th in bench minutes. So what you have is a fast, tall, not deep team. That is like really perfect for DraftKings scoring, honestly. So there's a lot of ways that you can target this game. I do really like the idea of getting to their two best players. Earl Timberlake is one of them. He is a peripheral stat machine, largely because they play so many possessions in these games. He's a down transfer from Miami. He's pretty good at $7,800. I could see him having a good night. Rafael Penzon was their point forward, but he's kind of been, he had an injury he was dealing with. I don't know if he's 100% recovered from it. His effectiveness has gone down, but he has the profile of still being really good. I he played 34 minutes in the American East Championship game. So I do think that, I'm sorry, Northeast Conference Champ. Yeah, it was Northeast Conference, right? Yeah, the Northeast Conference Championship game. So maybe he's back. I don't know. But Timberlake was carrying the load while Pinzon was out. Barry Evans is their best big. I think he's at a reasonable price for what his stats indicate for what he's been doing. And then after that, I'm really just interested in those three guys. The other two starters are Connor Withers and Keyshawn Mitchell. And then Kayvon Kramer and Ja'Kai Robinson come off the bench. But this is a team that wants to play their starters. Next up, on the Michigan State side, look, you're going to have to score points to beat this Bryant team. They played St. John's in the regular season, and St. John's put up 99 on them, and St. John's is not a good offense. So I think Michigan State's going to be able to score a lot. The interesting variable is how will they deal with Bryant's collective height. Jace Richardson is a guy that I do think can deal with it because he is a slasher. He's used to getting to the cup against bigger, stronger defenders, and he's really coming on strong lately for this Michigan State team. I like him at $7,600, and he's not a guy that has the best peripheral stat rates, but this is the type of game with it being super high possession that could turn into a really good peripheral stat game for Richardson. Jaden Akins kind of not my favorite here on this one. Personally, I don't think he is the absolute best option, but I do think that he could go off. He's a guy that can take a lot of shots every now and then. The guy I really like, though, is Jeremy Fears. He's really starting to get back into his role as the floor general and the point guard of this offense. Great peripheral stat guy. And you really see a ton of peripheral stats put up in games where the possessions get up and down like this. So I do like the idea of playing Jeremy Fears. All right, last game of the night is Liberty taking on Oregon. KenPom has this one projected to be Oregon 72-68. Oregon ranks 153rd in tempo. Liberty is all the way down at 284th. Liberty is a team that is a very methodical, analytics-oriented team. They attempt a ton of three-pointers. They don't crash the glass at all. And they get back in transition. They limit opponent transition. And they rebound defensively very well. And they also defend the three-point line very well. They don't play a lot of help defense because they're basically trusting their on-ball defender to get a stop. They don't want to surrender, catch, and shoot threes. That's a very analytically oriented take, right? So Liberty's starters are Colin Porter, Caden Matheny, Javon Malmer, Zach Cleveland, and Owen Aquino. The one that I have the most interest in is probably Zach Cleveland. He is their best player all around, peripheral stat machine. If they're going to contend in this game, he's probably going to end up with a pretty good stat line. Matheny is this like microwave shooter that'll shoot it from deep, but he's really just a shooter. I'm not all that interested in his profile at $5,700. And then Talon Peter is the team's leading scorer down here at $5,200. He does come off the bench. I don't mind getting to him, even though, the bench, we've talked about this with the bench players yesterday. I don't necessarily like playing like the alphas off the bench, but in an NCAA tournament game, you're going to play your best players. And so if he truly is one of their best players, he's going to play a lot of minutes at $5,200. And then Aquino is the starting center at $4,100. And he played over 24 minutes in every game in the Conference USA tournament. He generally plays over 25 minutes a game. If he stays out of foul trouble, he could put up a lot of stats in a hurry just by being on the floor. Now, on the Oregon side, Liberty is really small. So I'm going to play this Oregon side through Nate Biddle and Kwame Evans. Biddle has been great as of late. I think he's a very solid under-the-radar 9K play here on this slate. I love having guys in the very late-night game as well, so you can just see your lineups move on up as opposed to seeing them move on back. He could absolutely dominate against this undersized Liberty team. Same deal with Kwame Evans, who's been playing great lately. He's really been outplaying Brandon Angel, even though Brandon Angel did have the big, kind of big game against Indiana. Kwame Evans has been really, really good. The problem is with the Oregon guard, never really know which one it's going to be that's going to go off. So in a game where Liberty's going to really defend the three-point line and Oregon has a clear size advantage, I'm just going to play the guys that have the size advantage. I'm going to play Biddle and Evans. Sorry, Shellstad. Sorry, Bartholomew. I'll get back to you on another slate. But all right, y'all, that is going to do it here for this episode. A little bit shorter than last night. Still went a little bit longer than I would have liked to. But hey, these are the two longest slates of the year. We're never going to have a slate longer than this one ever again. Well, until next year. So that's going to do it here for this episode, y'all. Hopefully gave you guys all the information you need to know to help you win in making some DFS lineups or some player props here tomorrow. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button on YouTube. Please rate and review the audio. I really do appreciate it. I cannot stress that enough, how thankful I am for that. This is a time of year where my podcast starts growing a lot. We have gone up about 20 subscribers in the last week on YouTube. I really want to get to 1,000 before the tournament ends. The only way I can do that is with you guys' help, because you guys liking, rating and reviewing, even commenting on the video help drive it up to the top of the algorithm. So even if you want to just let me know your thoughts in the comments, let me know. I'll respond to what your thoughts are. It would just help drive the video up in searches, and I do appreciate that help. But that's going to do it for here, y'all. Remember, if you want more from me, you got the Twitter, you got the Discord, you got the Patreon, links in the description. We're going to go ahead and roll on out. We're going to go ahead and start prepping for this slate, actually. So best of luck to you guys on this Friday night slate. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you guys are as well. This is one of the best sports days of the year, along with the Thursday slate. So really looking forward to it. Let's have some fun. Let's win some money. Best of luck to you guys on Friday. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and I will see you guys next time.